The metal of the hull gleamed under the harsh lights of space. Sujai Kim floated carefully next to the massive warship, her breath making small clouds inside her helmet. The stars shone bright against the darkness as she worked. This job paid well, but working so close to the Krasthar ships always made her nervous. Section 12 checks complete, she said into her radio. Her voice sounded small in the vastness of space. Suji pushed herself along the side of the giant ship. Her tools clinked against her suit as she moved. The Krasthar were proud warriors who decorated their ships with trophies from their battles. Most were pieces of enemy ships or strange alien objects. Suji usually paid them no attention. Her job was to check and fix the ship's outer systems, not admire the decorations. "Move to the rear thrusters next," came the voice of her boss, Jaiho. "We need to finish before their captain returns." Suji adjusted her direction with a small burst from her suit jets. The Nexus 7 space station hung in the distance, its lights glowing warm against the cold of space. She had called that station home for 3 years now, ever since she left Earth to find better work. As she neared the back of the ship, something unusual caught her eye. Between the normal trophies was something different. Suji slowed her movement, squinting through her helmet. "What is that?" she whispered to herself. Among the metal pieces and strange objects was what looked like a person. Suji moved closer, not believing her eyes. It was a female figure with skin that shimmered like mother of pearl. The figure floated inside a clear energy field attached to the hull. Suji's heart beat faster. This wasn't just an object or statue. The chest of the figure moved slightly, and as Suji watched, the being's eyes, deep purple and bright, slowly turned toward her. Those eyes were alive, aware. "Suji, status update." Jaiho's voice made her jump. She swallowed hard. "All normal here, just checking the last section." Suji couldn't look away from those eyes. The alien was beautiful, with delicate features and that strange, shimmering skin. But the look in those eyes, it was pain and hopelessness. Sujai had never seen such sadness. "This can't be right," she whispered. "They've trapped you here." The alien made no movement except for the slight rise and fall of her chest. The energy field must be keeping her alive while stopping her from moving or speaking. Sujai looked around quickly. No one else was working outside the ship right now. She moved closer, almost touching the field. "I see you," she said, though she knew the alien couldn't hear her through the vacuum of space. "I won't forget you." The ship's lights suddenly glowed brighter. Sujai pushed back quickly, heart racing. "Sujai, the ship is powering up systems for a test. Get clear now." Jaiho's voice was urgent. Suji took one last look at the trapped alien. "I'll come back," she promised silently, then turned and jetted back toward the safety of the docking bay. Back inside the station, Sujai removed her spacesuit with shaking hands. Her mind kept showing her those purple eyes, alive and aware on the cold hull of the warship. "You look like you've seen a ghost," said Minho, another engineer who was preparing for his shift. Sujai hung up her helmet. "Something like that." She couldn't tell anyone what she'd seen. Not yet. The Krasthar were powerful allies of the human government. They had helped Earth during the resource wars. Their ships brought valuable materials to human colonies. No one would want to upset them over what they might call a cultural tradition. That night, Sujai couldn't sleep. She tossed in her small bed, the alien's eyes haunting her dreams. When morning came, she went straight to the station's information center. "I need everything we have on Krasthar battle customs," she told the computer. Hours later, Sujai sat surrounded by information screens. The Krasthar did indeed collect trophies from defeated enemies. Most were objects or ship parts. But for special enemies, leaders or those who had fought well, they sometimes took people. Living trophies, the text read, kept in stasis fields that prevent death but allow awareness. Suji felt sick. She searched deeper, looking for information about aliens with shimmering skin and purple eyes. Finally, she found what she was looking for. The Lyricians, she read, a peaceful spacefaring race known for their empathic abilities and shimmering skin. Images matched exactly what she had seen. The Lyricians had been almost wiped out in a war with the Krasthar 5 years ago. Their homeworld was now a Krasthar mining colony. Suja found one more piece of information, an old news report. Lyrician ambassador Ilya disappeared during peace talks, presumed dead. Suja closed her eyes, remembering those aware, suffering eyes. Not dead. Worse than dead. Her comm unit beeped. Engineer Kim, report to Docking Bay 3 for scheduled maintenance, said the computer voice. Suja gathered her courage. She was just one human engineer on a space station full of aliens and diplomats. The Krasthar were powerful and dangerous. But she couldn't forget those eyes, couldn't pretend she hadn't seen them. I'm coming, she said, both to her comm and to the trapped alien. She didn't know how, but she would find a way to help. No one deserved to be a living trophy, conscious but unable to move or speak, displayed like an object for years on end. As Suji walked to the docking bay, her mind was already forming the beginning of a plan. Suji sat in the quiet corner of the station's common area, her eyes fixed on her tablet. 3 days had passed since she saw the alien trapped on the hull of the Krasthar warship. She had not slept well since then. You look terrible, said a voice above her. Sujai looked up to see Daho, the station's security officer. They had become friends when Sujit first arrived at Nexus 7. He sat down across from her and pushed a cup of hot tea toward her. Thanks, she said, taking the cup. Just busy with work. Daho raised an eyebrow. You're a bad liar, Suji. What's wrong? Sujai looked around to make sure no one was listening. The common area was almost empty this early in the morning cycle. Have you ever seen the decorations on the Krasthar ships? She asked quietly. The trophies? Everyone has seen them. They're proud of their war prizes. Sujai leaned forward. I saw something different 3 days ago. Not an object. A person. Daho's smile disappeared. What do you mean? A living alien. Female. With shimmering skin. She was trapped in some kind of field on the hull. And Daho. She was awake. She could see me. Daho's face went pale. Sujai, be very careful who you tell this to. The Krasthar. I know they're powerful. I know they're our allies. But this is wrong. Suji turned her tablet so Daho could see. I found information about her species. They're called Lyricians. Look at this old news report. The screen showed a beautiful alien with pearl-like skin and deep purple eyes. The text beneath read, Ambassador Ilya leads peace talks. I think it's her, Daho. And I think she's been trapped there for years. Daho rubbed his face. What do you want to do? We can't just accuse the Krasthar of torture. It would cause a diplomatic crisis. I need to know more first. Can you help me access the station records? I want to see when this ship first docked here. Daho looked troubled, but nodded. Meet me in Security Office B after your shift. It's usually empty. Later that day, Sujo stood behind Daho as his fingers moved quickly over the keyboard. Here, he said. The Krasthar flagship first docked here 3 years ago, right after they won the war against the Lyricians. Suji felt cold. 3 years. She's been trapped there, awake, for 3 years. There's more, Daho said. According to these logs, the ship has requested special permission for hull exposure during every docking. Most ships keep their hulls contained in the docking shields, but they specifically ask to have the trophy section exposed to space. They want her to be seen. Suji whispered, It's not just about having a trophy. They want everyone to see her suffering. Daho closed the files. Suji, what are you planning? You can't free her alone. I need to talk to her first. Find out more. Talk. How? Suji pulled a small device from her pocket. I've been working on this. It's a modified communication unit. If I can attach it to her stasis field during my next maintenance shift, maybe I can establish some kind of contact. Daeho shook his head. The Krasthar will kill you if they catch you. Then I won't get caught. 2 days later, Suji was outside the ship again. Her heart pounded as she worked on a sensor array near the trophy section. Section check complete, she reported, moving to the next area. Instead of moving away, she slowly drifted toward the trapped Larishan. The alien's eyes found her immediately. There was a flicker of something in those purple depths. Recognition. Suji worked quickly, pretending to check nearby systems while she placed the small device on the edge of the stasis field. The device light blinked green, then red, then green again. It was working. "Can you hear me?" Suji whispered into her helmet mic, which was now connected to the device. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the Larishan skin began to glow with faint patterns of light, moving like waves across her body. A soft voice came through Suji's helmet, not in sound, but somehow directly in her mind. "Help, please." Suji's hands trembled. "I will. I'm trying. Are you Ambassador Ilaya?" More patterns of light rippled across the alien skin. "Yes. How long?" "You've been here 3 years," Suji said gently. The light patterns flared bright with what Suji somehow knew was pain. "Others see. No one helps." Suji felt tears form in her eyes. "I'm going to help you, but I need to know more. What is this field? How does it work?" "Stasis. Cannot move. Cannot die. Can see. Can feel. Can think." "Suji, wrap it up out there," came Jaiho's voice through the regular comm. "Ship captain is returning early." "Copy that," Suji replied. To Ilaya she whispered, "I have to go now, but I'll be back. I promise." The light patterns dimmed. Many promise, none return. "I will," Suji insisted. "Trust me." Back inside the station, Suji found Daeho waiting for her. "Did it work?" he asked. "Yes, it's definitely Ambassador Ilaya. She's been conscious the whole time, Daeho, watching people pass by, hoping someone would help." "And you're that someone?" Suji nodded. "But I need more help. I need to know exactly how the stasis field works and how to disable it without hurting her." "You need a medical expert," Daeho said. "I know someone," Suji replied. "Do you remember Dr. Maisuk? She specializes in alien physiology." "Suji, this is getting dangerous. More people mean more risk." Suji looked at Daeho with determination. "I just spoke with someone who has been trapped and fully aware for 3 years, watching people notice her and then walk away. I won't be one of those people." Daeho was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "Let's talk to Maisuk, but we need a plan, a real plan. And we need to know what the Krasthar will do when they discover their trophy is missing. One step at a time," Suji said. "First, we learn everything we can." As they walked toward the medical section, Suji thought of those patterns of light on Ilaya's skin, communicating years of suffering and lost hope. She made a silent promise again. This time, someone would help. Dr. Maisuk's office was small and quiet, tucked away in the medical section of the station. Suji and Daeho sat across from her desk as she looked at the data they had gathered. "This is very serious," Maisuk said, her face grim. "The stasis field is complex. It keeps the body alive but unable to move. A terrible prison. Can you help us free her?" Suji asked. Maisuk pushed her glasses up and sighed. "It would be dangerous, for her and for us. The sudden change could kill her after so long in stasis." Daeho leaned forward. "And if we succeed, the Krasthar will notice their trophy is missing. They might attack the station." Suji's shoulders dropped. She had hoped for more support. "I didn't say I wouldn't help," Maisuk added quickly. "I just want you to understand the risks." They were interrupted by Suji's tablet beeping. She looked down at a message from Daeho. The Krasthar have requested a special maintenance team tomorrow. Sujai read aloud. They say they need to refresh their collection. What does that mean? Daho asked. Mysuk's face paled. In medical terms, a long-term stasis patient needs regular adjustments. For a prisoner in a punitive stasis, refreshing usually means resetting their physical condition to prevent adaptation. It's extremely painful. Suji felt sick. We're out of time. We have to act now. Suji, think about what you're saying, Daho warned. This isn't just about one alien. The Krasthar supply half the resources for human colonies. If we anger them, millions could suffer. The room grew quiet. Sujai stared at her hands. When I was a child, she finally said, my grandmother told me a story about a time on Earth when powerful countries would look away from suffering because it was convenient. She said the greatest shame wasn't from those who caused pain, but from those who saw it and did nothing. Sujai looked up at her friends. I've already seen Elia. I've spoken to her. I can't pretend I didn't. Mysuk nodded slowly. The medical risks I can handle. But what about after? Where would we hide her? I have access to the unused storage bays in Section 12, Daho said, surprising them both. Security never checks there. When they stared at him, he shrugged. I didn't say I wouldn't help either. They spent the next hour making plans. Mysuk made a list of supplies she would need to keep the Lyrishan alive after release. Daho mapped out the security patrols and camera positions near the docking bay. What about when the Krasthar notice she's missing? Mysuk asked. They'll search the station. Suja had been thinking about this problem. We need a replacement, something that looks like her from a distance. Daho snapped his fingers. Jun-Ho in engineering. He's been working on holographic projections. We could create an image that looks like Elia still trapped in the field. Would it fool the Krasthar? Mysuk asked. Maybe not for long, but it might give us time to get her somewhere safe, Suji said. As they continued planning, Suji's tablet beeped again. This time, it was a message from the station's main office. She read it and her face went white. What now? Daho asked. The Krasthar have moved up their schedule. They're doing the refreshing tonight. In 6 hours. The room went silent again. It's too soon, Mysuk whispered. We don't have everything ready. Sujai stood up. Then we work with what we have. I'm not letting her suffer another day. Daho rubbed his face. Suji, this is crazy. We need more time. She's been there for 3 years, Daho. 3 years of watching people walk by. How much more time should she wait? Daho looked at Suji for a long moment, then nodded. Fine, but we do this carefully. No mistakes. They quickly adjusted their plan. Mysuk would prepare a medical pod in her private lab. Daho would create a distraction in the security system. Suji would remove Elia from the stasis field and replace her with a basic holographic image. What about after? Mysuk asked. Even if we hide her, the Krasthar will eventually discover she's gone. One problem at a time, Suji said. First, we save her, then we figure out the rest. As they finished their planning, Suji felt a mix of fear and determination. She knew they were risking everything. Their jobs, possibly their lives, and maybe even relations between humans and the Krasthar. But when she thought of those purple eyes watching people pass by for years, the choice seemed clear. We meet in Docking Bay 5 in 3 hours, Suji said. Bring only what you absolutely need. As they prepared to leave, Daho caught Suji's arm. Are you sure about this? Once we start, there's no going back. Suji thought about the patterns of light on Elia's skin, the way they had flared with pain when she learned how long she had been trapped. I've never been more sure of anything, she said. Mysuk put her hand on Suji's shoulder. Then we're with you. They left to prepare, each knowing that after tonight, nothing would be the same. Sujai looked at her reflection in a window as she walked back to her quarters. The woman looking back seemed different somehow, more determined perhaps, or maybe just more aware of what she was capable of. In 3 hours, they would attempt the impossible. They would challenge one of the most powerful species in the galaxy. They would risk everything to save someone they didn't even know. And somehow, despite all the fear and uncertainty, it felt like the only right choice. Suja checked her spacesuit one last time. Her hands were shaking. In just minutes, she would attempt something that no one had ever dared to do: steal a trophy from a Krasthar warship. Communication check. Daho's voice came through her helmet. "I hear you," Suji replied. "Medical bait is ready," Mysuk added. "Remember, you'll have 20 minutes of oxygen once you disconnect her from the stasis field. Not a minute more." Suji took a deep breath. Understood. Daho had created a small device that would project a holographic image of Ilea. It wasn't perfect, but it might fool the Krasthar long enough for them to get away. The device sat heavy in Suji's pocket. "Beginning station maintenance now," Daho said. "Power will dim in 3, 2, 1. The lights in the docking bay flickered and dimmed. This was part of their plan, a scheduled power adjustment that would hide any energy spikes when they disabled the stasis field. Suja pushed off from the airlock, floating out into the darkness of space. The massive Krasthar ship loomed ahead, its hull gleaming under the stars. No crew members were outside right now. They were all preparing for the refreshing ceremony that would begin in 2 hours. Approaching target, Suji whispered, though there was no one to hear her in the vacuum of space. She moved carefully along the hull until she reached the trophy section. Ilea was still there, her pearl skin now dull after years in the stasis field. But her eyes, those purple eyes, turned immediately to Suji, and there was something new in them: hope. Suji attached herself to the hull with magnetic boots and took out Mysuk's device. It would safely disable the stasis field without harming Ilea. "I'm starting now," Suji said into her comm. "Cameras on that section are looping old footage," Daho confirmed. "You're invisible to them." Suji placed the device against the edge of the stasis field. It beeped once, then twice. Green lights flashed across its surface. "Field weakening," Mysuk said, monitoring from her lab. 10 seconds to collapse. Suji watched as the energy field around Ilea began to flicker. The Larishan's body trembled slightly. "Almost there," Suji whispered. Suddenly, red lights began to flash along the hull of the ship. "What's happening?" Suji asked, panic rising in her throat. "They're starting systems early." Daho's voice was urgent. Someone must have changed the schedule. The stasis field collapsed completely. Ilea fell forward into Suji's arms, her body limp like a doll. She was so light, much lighter than Suji had expected. "I've got her," Suji said, struggling to hold the alien while placing the holographic projector. Setting up the fake now. Suji's fingers fumbled with the device. Finally, it activated, projecting an image of Ilea back in the stasis field. From a distance, it looked real enough. "Suji, you need to move now," Daho urged. "They're sending crew to the hull to prepare for the ceremony." Suji pushed away from the ship, holding Ilea tightly against her. The Larishan was barely conscious, her skin cool to the touch even through Suji's gloves. Heading back to the airlock, Suji reported. She used her suit jets to push them both toward the station. It was harder than she expected. Ilea's weight, though light, threw off her balance. "2 Krasthar crew members have exited their ship," Daho warned. "They're checking the hull." Suji moved faster, her heart pounding. The airlock seemed so far away. "Oxygen levels for Ilea are dropping," Mysuk said. "You have 15 minutes left." Suji could see the airlock now, its lights beckoning her. Just a little further. A bright light suddenly hit her from behind. Suji turned her head to see a Krasthar worker in a spacesuit, pointing a light in her direction. "They've spotted you," Daho shouted. "Distract them," Suji ordered, pushing harder toward the airlock. "Sending emergency alerts to their ship now," Daho replied. Suji reached the airlock, and punched in the code. The door slid open agonizingly slowly. She pushed Ilea inside first, then followed, sealing the door behind them. The airlock began to fill with air. Suji held Ilea close, watching the alien's chest rise and fall with shallow breaths. "We made it to the airlock," Sujai reported, pressurizing now. "The Krasthar are heading back to their ship," Daho said. "My false alarm about a fuel leak worked, but they'll check their trophies soon." The airlock completed its cycle. The inner door opened to reveal Maisuk waiting with a floating medical pod. "Quick, get her in," Maisuk ordered. Together they lifted Ilea into the pod. The Lyrishan's eyes fluttered open briefly, focusing on Sujai before closing again. "Her vital signs are weak but stable," Maisuk said, checking the pod's readings. "We need to get her to my lab immediately." They moved quickly through the back corridors of the station that Daho had cleared for them. The medical pod floated silently between them. "The Krasthar have returned to the trophy section," Daho reported through their comms. "They're examining the hologram." Suji's heart sank. Will they notice? Not yet, but they're suspicious, something about the energy readings. They reached Maisuk's lab and sealed the door behind them. The doctor immediately connected Ilea to more advanced medical equipment. "She's been in stasis for so long," Maisuk said, working quickly. "Her muscles have atrophied, but her mind is still strong." As if in response to these words, Ilea's eyes opened again. The purple depths found Sujai, and patterns of light rippled weakly across her skin. "Thank you," came the voice in Suji's mind. "We did it," Suji whispered, tears forming in her eyes. "You're safe now." The moment was broken by an alarm blaring through the station. "They know," Daho said, rushing into the lab. "The Krasthar have discovered the hologram. They're demanding a station-wide search." Maisuk looked up from her work. "We can't stay here. They'll find us." "I have a plan," Daho said, "but you won't like it." Suji took one last look at Ilea, who was watching them with those intelligent purple eyes. After 3 years of being a trophy, she was finally free. Whatever came next, Suji knew they had made the right choice. "Tell me the plan," she said. The station was in chaos. Red alarms flashed as Krasthar soldiers stomped through the corridors. Their angry voices echoed through the station's communication system. "All humans will be questioned. Return the property of the Krasthar Empire or face our wrath." In the small escape pod, Sujai looked at her friends and the rescued alien. Daho's plan had been simple but dangerous. Leave the station completely. They had snuck into an emergency escape pod while the Krasthar were focused on searching the main areas. "How long until they notice this pod is missing?" Suji asked. "With the alarms and confusion, maybe an hour," Daho replied, checking the small ship's systems. "But we can't go far. This pod only has enough fuel for a few days." Maisuk was still working on Ilea. The Lyrishan was sitting up now, her pearl skin beginning to glow more brightly. Patterns of light moved across her body as she looked at each of them. "She's trying to communicate," Maisuk said. Suji moved closer. "Can you understand me, Ilea?" The light patterns shifted. In Suji's mind, she heard a soft voice. "Yes. You saved me. Why?" Suji wasn't sure how to answer. Because it was wrong. No one should suffer like that. Many saw. Only you helped. The escape pod shuddered as Daho guided it away from the station. Through the small window, Suji could see the massive shape of the Krasthar warship. "They're preparing to launch fighters," Daho said grimly. "They'll find us soon." Maisuk looked up from her medical equipment. "Ilea is getting stronger by the minute. The Lyrishans have amazing healing abilities when not suppressed by the stasis field." As if to prove this point, Ilea slowly stood up. She was tall and graceful despite her weakness. Her purple eyes studied the small control panel of the escape pod. "May I?" she asked in their minds. Daho stepped aside, confused but curious. Elea placed her shimmering hands on the panel. Immediately, the lights changed color. The pod's engines hummed with new power. "What did you do?" Suji asked in amazement. "Called for help," Elea replied. "My people are not all gone." Before anyone could ask more questions, a new alarm sounded. Daho rushed back to the controls. "3 Krasthar fighters are heading our way," he said. "We can't outrun them." Suji felt fear rise in her chest. After everything they had done, they would be caught anyway. The Krasthar would take Elea back, and they would all be punished, perhaps even displayed as new trophies. Elea moved to the window, her eyes fixed on something in the distance. "Wait," she said simply. Suddenly, the darkness of space lit up with brilliant flashes of light. 3 sleek ships appeared, their hulls shimmering with the same pearl-like quality as Elea's skin. "Larishan ships," Mysuk gasped. "But how?" "We have hidden for years," Elea explained, gathering strength, waiting for the right moment. The Larishan ships moved between the escape pod and the approaching Krasthar fighters. Beams of purple energy shot from the Larishan vessels, not destroying the fighters but disabling them. "They're protecting us," Suji whispered. A new voice came through the pod's communication system. "Escape vessel, this is Captain Taylor of the Larishan Resistance. Stand by for docking." The largest Larishan ship moved closer, a door opening in its side. The escape pod was gently pulled inside. When the door sealed behind them, Suji and her friends stared in wonder at the beautiful ship interior. Everything glowed with soft light. Larishans approached, their faces showing joy at seeing Elea. They spoke in patterns of light that Suji couldn't understand. Elea turned to her human rescuers. "My people thank you," she said. "For many years, we thought all our leaders were lost. Finding me gives them new hope." "What happens now?" Suji asked. "The Krasthar will hunt us all down." Elea smiled for the first time. "Not anymore. While I was their trophy, I learned much. I know their weaknesses, their plans, their secrets. I heard everything they said in front of me, thinking I was just an object." The ship trembled slightly as it moved away from the station. On a large screen, Suji could see the Krasthar warship growing smaller in the distance. "We have sent a message to all stations and planets in this sector," Captain Taylor said, "with evidence of how the Krasthar treat living beings. The recording devices in your suits captured everything." Daho looked stunned. "Our suit cameras were on the whole time." "Yes," Elea said. "The images of me on their hull and my rescue are now being seen by everyone, including the Human Federation." "But the Krasthar are powerful allies to humans," Mysuk said. "Our people depend on them." Captain Taylor shook his head. "Not anymore. 3 other species have already come forward with similar stories of living trophies. The balance of power is shifting." 1 month later, Sujai stood in a large hall on the Human Federation Central Station. Beside her were Daho and Mysuk, all wearing formal clothes. Across from them stood Elea, now fully recovered and dressed in the flowing robes of the Larishan ambassador. "The treaty between humans and Larishans is now official," announced the Federation president. "And with it, our formal condemnation of the Krasthar practice of living trophies." After the ceremony, Elea approached Suji privately. "My people ask why you helped me when so many others looked away," she said. "What should I tell them about humans?" Suji thought for a moment. "Tell them that we're still learning, that sometimes one person needs to be brave before others find their courage." Elea's skin glowed with beautiful patterns. "In my 3 years as a trophy, I saw countless beings look at me and turn away. I had lost hope that anyone would ever see me as more than an object." She touched Suji's hand gently. "You didn't just save me. You reminded everyone what it means to be truly alive." As Suji watched Elea join her people, she felt a sense of peace. The Krasthar had lost much of their power in the galactic community. The Larishans were rebuilding, and humans had gained a powerful new ally. all because she had refused to look away from a pair of suffering eyes. Ready to go home? Daho asked, joining her. Suji smiled. Yes, but I think our definition of home just got a lot bigger.